Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Today we're breaking down a company that certainly caught a lot of attention in real estate, Rexford Industrial Realty. It's seen as a REIT that's kind of defying the wider market trends. But does the data really stack up? That's the core question. Is Rexford Industrial Realty a good buy right now? Now, before we jump in, just a quick reminder, please subscribe, like, and comment. It really helps us out. And hey, if there's a specific company you want us to analyze next time, definitely leave it in the comments below. We love getting your suggestions. Okay, so the buzz around Rexford Industrial Realty, you can really feel it. And it seems like it's all built on this very specific, almost perfect niche in the market. It sounds great on paper, but we need to see if the fundamentals and the technicals actually back that story up.
That's exactly what we're here to do. We're looking at the source material we have as of October 2025 and checking for alignment. We need to see if three things line up. The basic fundamentals, their long-term advantage, then the technicals, what the charts are telling us right now, and finally, any immediate catalysts, things coming up that could move the needle short-term. So, starting at that foundation, Rexford Industrial Realty's real edge isn't just owning buildings, it's about scarcity. They dominate the infill Southern California industrial market. And that's not just nice-to-have property, it's basically irreplaceable land. Demand is sky-high, supply is super limited.
Okay, let's dig into that word infill a bit, because it sounds like that's central to their whole strategy. It suggests they're not just collecting rent, they're more like gatekeepers in this specific zone.
Yeah.
How does that give them such, well, almost tech-like margins?
Exactly. Being the big player in a market starved for space directly translates to efficiency and pricing power. Just look at the numbers. They're pulling a net margin of 33.88%.
Wow, 33.88%.
Yeah. In the REIT world, where margins are usually pretty tight because it's so capital intensive, that figure is, well, it's almost unheard of. It's the direct result of having almost no competition in a market where you just can't easily build more space.
Right, that really puts their recent growth into context. We saw pretty strong quarterly revenue growth, up 4.7% year over year. So that growth isn't just about adding square footage, it's showing that their pricing power, those rent increases, are really sticking across the board.
And on the earnings front, they managed to beat the analysts' expectations last quarter. Only by a penny, sure, but still. You combine that with their confidence about the future, it says a lot. Management put out guidance for fiscal year 2025 earnings between $2.399 and $2.410.
Okay.
That suggests they see those strong rent hikes continuing right through the end of the year.
So the engine seems to be running smoothly, fueled by that unique geography. But real estate is all about cash and debt, right? Leverage can be a killer. How's their balance sheet looking?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. They're actually very conservative, extremely conservative even. Their debt-to-equity ratio is just 0.37.
0.37. That seems really low for a REIT.
It is. In an industry that usually relies heavily on leverage to acquire assets, that's exceptionally low.
But hang on. Isn't that potentially a negative? Could they be too cautious, maybe leaving growth on the table that others are grabbing with more debt?
That's a fair question. But in their specific market, that flexibility is the advantage. Opportunities to buy in that Southern California infill market are rare. They pop up unexpectedly. So management needs to be ready to move fast. That low leverage means they have the firepower, minimal debt costs, and they're perfectly set up to grab strategic properties when they become available.
Okay, that makes sense. And their liquidity numbers seem to back that readiness up. The sources show a quick ratio of 5.59 and current ratio of 2.95.
Yeah, basically they've got plenty of cash ready to cover immediate needs and fund those acquisitions without any financial stress. Healthy cash flow just keeps fueling that readiness.
So that strong liquidity, the conservative debt, that's really the foundation of the bull case, letting them seize opportunities.
Exactly. They don't have to wait around for financing.
So if the finances are solid, how's the market actually viewing the stock price right now? Let's switch over to the technicals. The price is currently hovering around the $41 to $42 range, which confirms it's been trending upwards recently. Looking at the charts, for this bullish trend to continue, we need to watch two key levels. On the downside, support really needs to hold above $38. That's kind of the line in the sand. And on the upside, they need a convincing break above the $45 resistance level.
Right.
Getting past $45 would be a strong signal, confirming that acceleration the fundamentals seem to suggest.
And the momentum indicators seem to agree that an upward trend is established. The stock's consistently trading above both its 50-day and its 200-day moving averages. That's a pretty classic positive technical signal.
Yeah, and what's good is it doesn't look like crazy, frothy buying either. It's not like a massive spike that screams correction coming. Indicators like the RSI, the MACD, They suggest the bullish momentum is healthy. Basically, the stock's moving up steadily, not getting way ahead of itself, which is often a good sign.
Right, sustainable movement.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. The recent momentum, especially driven by that strong Q3 report back in October, that wasn't just a small beat. It really shifted the narrative.
Yeah, the October results were quite strong. DPS came in at 60 cents, beating the estimates. But maybe the biggest signal of confidence for management was raising their full-year core FFO guidance.
Right, they bumped it up.
To $2.39 to $2.41 per share. Raising guidance, even just by a little bit at the midpoint like that, confirms they expect that premium rent growth to continue into Q4.
And they weren't just sitting on their cash. They used it smartly. Their capital allocation in Q3 was pretty shareholder-friendly. They bought back $150 million worth of their own stock.
That's right. Nearly 3.9 million shares at an average price of $38.62.
Buying back shares below where it's trading now, that definitely helps existing shareholders and supports the stock price.
And operationally, they showed the machine is running well. Executed 3.3 million square feet of leasing just in that quarter.
3.3 million, wow.
Yeah, it shows not just that their properties are full, but that there's constant strong demand for the limited space they have. That provides a solid base for future earnings.
Okay, now we do need to cover the mixed signals from Wall Street analysts. No analysis is complete without looking at both sides, right?
Absolutely.
While the stock has momentum, the overall analyst consensus right now is actually hold. And the average price target is around $41.70. Pretty much exactly where the stock is trading today.
That hold rating does hide some stronger views underneath, though. You had Cantor Fitzgerald starting coverage with an overweight rating and a pretty bullish $50 target.
$50, okay.
BNP Paribas Exane kept their neutral rating but has a $40,000 target. But for balance, Wolf Research did downgrade them recently, October 20th, to peer perform.
Yeah.
So you definitely see different takes on the valuation out there.
Right, so the market's maybe still digesting that Q3 beat and what it means long term.
Seems like it.
Okay, so for someone watching the stock, what are the key things to look out for in the next, say, 3 months? What could actually move the price?
Well, there's the Q4 dividend payment coming up in December, $0.43 per share, which is nice. But the really big one is the Q4 earnings announcement. That's scheduled for January 2026.
The guidance.
Exactly. That's when management will give their outlook for 2026, and that's what analysts really latch onto to adjust their price targets.
And given how well that $150 million buyback seemed to work in Q3,
Right.
there's bound to be speculation about whether they'll continue buying back shares.
Definitely. If the stock stays, reasonably valued compared to its assets, using that strong balance sheet for more buybacks could provide really good support for the price.
Makes sense.
And of course, don't forget the bigger picture. Industrial real estate demand, especially in those unique infill markets, is still strong overall. That provides nice tailwind.
Okay, before we wrap up with our final take, we have to touch on the risks. Need to be transparent here.
Yeah.
Since so much of their success hinges on that one geographic area, Southern California, what's the main structural risk you see?
It's not necessarily just broad market ups and downs, although that's always a factor. The key risk here is really regulatory concentration. Their huge advantage comes from that limited supply in SoCal. But what if California brought in, say, specific new industrial taxes or major zoning changes or even rent controls aimed right at these types of property?
Oh, okay.
That reliance on one political and economic zone, that's the potential Achilles heel.
That's a really important point.
Sure.
Okay, so let's pull it all together. We've got the unique geographic dominance, that amazing 33% net margin, the super conservative balance sheet, accelerating revenue, positive technical signals. Taking all that into account, our analysis lands on an overall bullish rating of 8 out of 10.
And just to connect those dots one last time on the financial strength, the fact that their balance sheet is so low leverage net debt to enterprise value, it's only 23.2%, that really underpins the rating.
Right.
That financial freedom is what allows management to jump on those rare acquisition opportunities in the tight SoCal market, which reinforces the bullish case long term.
Absolutely. So the key takeaways for you, the listener, remember the strong liquidity, that dominance in the high-demand Southern California market, and those near-term catalysts coming up, especially that January earnings report and guidance. Hopefully this helps you interpret future news and price moves.
And for a final thought to chew on, our analysis shows Rexford's success is totally tied to Southern California's unique market dynamics right now. But looking long-term, geographic expansion could be a catalyst. So ask yourself this: How easily could they actually transfer their specific value creation strategy, their redevelopment know-how, to a new area with different supply and demand?
Interesting question.
And if they did manage to expand successfully outside of Southern California, what would that do to their current 810 rating? Something to think about as you watch them going forward.
Great point. Thank you for tuning in to Investing Talk Podcast. We'll catch you on the next analysis.